You are one of over 60 MPs, Conservative MPs, who have said that they will be voting against the government's measures in regard to vaccine passports, in regard to the extension of face masks and other measures as well on Tuesday. Why don't you just tell us why you believe that this legislation is wrong?
Well, we've got to have a new normal which supports people being free and prosperous and which fosters a spirit of responsibility. And that's why we ought now to be living with coronavirus like we live with flu. We're really not in the same situation today that we were in last year. People are vaccinated. The vaccines continue to protect against serious illness and death. We need to be moving into a world where people take responsibility for themselves, make their own choices and live a free life. I'm afraid at the moment, I think the Conservative Party is in danger of losing its soul. And that's why today I'm choosing to announce the relaunch of Conservative Way Forward. We're going to redefine the territory of the Conservative Party so it clearly does stand for freedom and responsibility and community. And I'm asking people to support us by going to conservativewayforward.com.
So you're relaunching Conservative Way Forward. That's interesting because you've obviously been heavily involved with that in the past. Or is this a challenge to Boris Johnson's leadership? What are you saying about the way he's leading the Conservative Party? Because you're clearly not happy, Steve.
As I've said in an article in the Telegraph this morning, which is in front of their paywall now if people want to read it, on a range of issues, I'm afraid the Conservative Party is currently in the wrong place and heading in the wrong direction. And we've got to put that right. So I'm not going to stand idly by and let our party descend into a kind of left-wing authoritarianism that's fit for the Labour Party. We should stand for freedom, and we should be stand for those things which make people prosperous and happy, putting faith in one another, having the dignity of choice, getting meaning from responsibility in all our relationships. So these are the kinds of things that I want us to deliver as a party. At the moment, I'm afraid it doesn't look like any member of the cabinet is in a position to think things through and change things around. They've got their own problems in government. So I'm going to create the space. We're going to create the space for the Conservative Party to really think through who we want to be and what kind of society we want to create. And it's conservativewayforward.com if people would like to be the first to know.
Steve, you were a very serious thorn in the side of Theresa May when Brexit was happening. Do you think this is more or less serious than what was happening even just 2 or 3 years ago in regard to Brexit?
Well, look, I'd love to not be a thorn in anyone's side, but I'm afraid I do have strong views about the quality of society and life we lead. I think that really, in the long run, this is currently less serious. That is because during those years, we really tested our constitution very nearly to destruction. I'm very happy to say our constitution worked and survived, and the public, when given the choice, delivered a strong majority. I suppose what I'm saying now is let's not squander that majority. We've got to set our country up to be unleashed and take advantage of having left the European Union. We've got to make sure that through coronavirus we don't create a miserable dystopia in which to live, but instead once again return to a free society. We shouldn't be poorer and colder over net zero. We've got to sort out the public finances, have sound money. The issues go on, but in the end, really what I'm saying is Conservatives have been right all along. We've just actually got to do what we say we believe in. And I'm afraid far too often over the past the past couple of years in particular, we've done what we hate, and that's got to stop. We've got to do what we believe in.
You're saying the past couple of years in particular. I mean, that is the time. I think it's actually 2 years to the day that Boris Johnson was elected Prime Minister. It was the 12th of December 2019 that he was elected with that amazing sort of, astonishing, no matter how you think politically, a majority of 80. Now it looks as if he may only get this legislation through this on Tuesday, I should say, this week. Because of the votes of the Labour Party. This is an astonishing situation because, of course, Theresa May, it was very, very touch and go at many points, relying on the DUP's votes on numerous occasions, sometimes relying on Labour's votes, but mostly not. I mean, Boris Johnson should be master of all he surveys. The last 6 weeks in particular have been terrible for him. It's been one thing after another. We see in the Mirror this morning the fact that, the allegation that he was breaking COVID rules, and the evidence looks pretty strong for that. How have we got to the situation? What is to coin a phrase, the way forward, I suppose? How can Boris Johnson get his mojo back, Steve?
Well, the first thing is we've got to just refresh what we believe in, and that's why Conservative Way Forward's being launched. But really, I was referring to I said 2 years, but I'm really referring to the coronavirus pandemic. I don't think any of us really thought this is what we were going to be dealing with. And, in a sense, my heart goes out to Boris that he's had to take us through this, lead us through this. He's had
you
to
say, sorry to interrupt you, Steve, but you say your heart goes out to Boris. I mean, you're someone who's creating huge problems for him, are you not?
Well, I can't deny that. But the truth is here, I want to rescue the Conservative Party, and I'll be very, very happy if Boris rescues his position. I'm very clear I'm not going down the road of trying to remove a Prime Minister. I've been down that road before. I'm not doing it again. But this situation clearly has to be rescued. We've spent the best part of 2 years now dealing with coronavirus. It's time to stop and think about the kind of society that we are creating now that we've got the vaccines, and we really can choose to live with coronavirus like we live with the flu. But what I cannot do is stand by and allow us to get into a position where ministers routinely impose extremely costly and minute interventions on all our lives at the drop of a hat because they've panicked about a new variant.
But it's interesting.
The disease is with us forever now, and there'll be new variants.
I agree with you. We've got to get to some form of acceptable level of risk. But actually, if you look at consistent opinion polling, I'm sure not the opinion of the vast majority of people who listen and watch talk radio, and certainly not my opinion. But if you look at the opinion polls, there is strong support for various impositions of restrictions. Time and time again, the public, in some ways, in this regard, is actually on Boris Johnson's side and not your side.
Well, unfortunately, the state as a machine has deliberately set out to terrify people. There's an excellent book called A State of Fear. It sets out an awful catalogue of how behavioural science has been used to put people into that state of mind and that position. And it's not at all healthy. Back in the 80s during the Cold War, this is the sort of thing we would have expected East Germany or the Soviet Union to do. But actually, it's been the United Kingdom, extraordinarily, that's used the tactics of behavioural psychology deliberately to manipulate the nation into a state of fear and compliance. And that's why I'm saying we can't go forward like this. I wouldn't care if I was the last person standing. I will not tolerate the UK undermining freedom under the rule of law. And I will continue to insist that responsibility is really the foundation of good relationships with other people. And, this is what we've got to turn around. We're in a situation where, Conservative-minded people need a good quality Conservative Party. And as I say, that's why we're relaunching Conservative Way Forward in the new year.
Tell me about, let's talk about the Conservative Party more generally, and a little bit about Labour as well. I mean, do you feel sitting on those backbenches during, for example, Prime Minister's question time and so on, that the atmosphere is different? Do you feel Keir Starmer is cutting through? Because it's fascinating when you have people interviewed on television, Vox Pops and things like that, where people are using the language Keir Starmer is using. They're saying they're taking us for fools. They're saying it's one rule for them, it's one rule for the rest of us. That kind of language is being reflected back more and more. Do you feel the threat from the Labour Party is a serious one? And look at the opinion polls as well. 6 points ahead, 7 points ahead, depending on the opinion polls that you look at. Are you worried that the Conservatives won't win the next election?
I'm always worried that we might not win the next election because we'd be fools to be complacent. I'm determined that we must have Conservative government and good quality Conservative government. But let's not pretend that the Labour Party on this subject is anything other than an opposition in name only. There was an MP gave a quote to say he's not very rebellious, but he's voted against the government more often on COVID than the Labour Party. I mean, they seem extraordinarily to be about to vote to entrench systematic inequality through coronavirus status certification, so-called vaccine passports. I mean, what credibility will they have on the issue of equality once they've done that? So, the Labour Party is effectively useless. They're not fit to govern the country. And I'm afraid, I think at the moment what we're seeing is it's governments that lose elections, not oppositions which win them.
Yeah,
and that's why it's so important that we take this moment to really think about who we are, what kind of society we're trying to create, and to make sure that we don't have this new normal, which is a thoroughgoing dystopia, which none of us really want to live in.